It was a quiet autumn afternoon in a small Tennessee town when Matthew Reynolds found himself sitting on the wooden porch of his late grandfather's home, staring out at the golden leaves spiraling down from the oaks that lined the dirt road. He was 37, recently divorced, recently laid off, and painfully aware that life had not turned out the way he once imagined. What haunted him most wasn't the mistakes he made, but how little he truly understood about living. Matthew had returned to his childhood hometown after everything in his fast-paced city life collapsed. He figured the quiet would help him think. What he didn't expect was that it would also help him feel, and that was the beginning of everything changing. On the first night back, Matthew opened the dusty old trunk in the attic. Inside were several leather-bound journals belonging to his grandfather, William Reynolds, a retired schoolteacher known around town for his wisdom and firm but kind personality. William had passed away 5 years ago, but in these journals, he seemed more alive than ever. The entries weren't just stories, they were lessons. Not preachy advice, but hard-earned truths written with honesty and humility. They were filled with reflections on regrets, victories, people, and choices. The more Matthew read, the more he realized how disconnected he had become from what really mattered. That night, under the flickering attic light, his journey began. One of the first lessons William wrote about was the importance of understanding time. He said, "Most people act like they have all the time in the world, and then they wake up one day realizing they wasted it on the wrong things. Learn to treat time like gold. It's limited and precious." That line struck Matthew hard. He had spent years chasing promotions, bigger apartments, and admiration from people who wouldn't show up to his funeral. Meanwhile, he had ignored holidays with family, missed his daughter's recitals, and postponed vacations with his then-wife, believing he was building a future. But he was only digging a hole. Over the next few weeks, Matthew turned reading into a daily ritual. He'd wake up at sunrise, make black coffee just like his grandfather did, and sit with the journals as though attending a personal university of life. Each journal entry felt like a lecture, a story, and a conversation all at once. One story told of William's youth, where he nearly lost a lifelong friend, Robert, over something petty. "I learned that pride is a slow poison," he wrote. "It feels like strength, but it rots your relationships and isolates your heart. Learn to say sorry even when you think you're right. Learn to forgive, especially when it hurts." That struck Matthew deeply. He hadn't spoken to his best friend, Jordan, in 4 years, over a misunderstanding that neither of them could even explain anymore. That same day, Matthew picked up the phone and called Jordan. The call began awkwardly but ended in tears and laughter. A door that had been shut for years reopened, and with it, a part of Matthew's heart he thought had died. Another entry that reshaped Matthew's thinking was one titled, "The Lie of Success." William wrote, "Success is not about what you own, it's about who you become. You can have all the awards, money, and respect, and still be spiritually bankrupt. If you wouldn't want to be friends with yourself, you're not successful." That line made Matthew evaluate his inner world. Who had he become in pursuit of success? He had grown bitter, impatient, and emotionally unavailable. He used to be warm-hearted, spontaneous, and kind. Life had hardened him, but it didn't mean he couldn't soften again. On the 4th week, Matthew was in the town grocery store when he ran into Ms. Evelyn Carter, his old high school teacher. She was in her 80s now but just as sharp as ever. She asked him how life was, and he gave her a short, rehearsed answer. But she didn't accept it. "You look like someone who's finally slowing down," she said. "It's not a bad thing, Matthew. Most people never do." That conversation lingered. Slowing down wasn't failure, it was wisdom. Life wasn't meant to be rushed through like a checklist. One of William's later entries reflected this idea. "Hurry is the enemy of depth. Fast relationships don't last. Fast decisions often regret. Fast living ends in burnout. Choose depth over speed every time." With that in mind, Matthew began reconnecting with his daughter, Lily, who lived with his ex-wife in Atlanta. He started with handwritten letters, each one thoughtful and personal. Then came phone calls and eventually a visit. Lily was hesitant at first, unsure if her dad was going to disappear again. But with patience and consistency, the walls began to fall. Matthew also started volunteering at the local community center, helping troubled teens learn job skills. He realized how much his story could help others avoid his path. He wasn't trying to fix the world, just trying to serve it in a way that mattered. One especially moving journal entry told a story of loss. William had once mentored a boy named Thomas who fell into addiction and died young. William wrote, "You can't save everyone, but you must never stop trying to be the light. Even when darkness wins, let it not be because you stopped shining." That one changed how Matthew viewed his own failures. He had spent years haunted by the people he couldn't help, the people he hurt, and the bridges he burned. But now he saw redemption not as perfection, but as consistent effort in the right direction. By month 3, Matthew was transformed. Not perfect, never that, but different. More grounded, more present, more alive. He stopped comparing himself to others, a lesson from William that said, "Comparison is the thief of joy and the killer of authenticity." You don't need to be better than others. You just need to be true to who you are and better than you were yesterday. Matthew also began keeping his own journal, adding lessons of his own. He wrote about the importance of listening, truly listening without trying to fix or respond. He wrote about choosing love even when it's not returned, because love is more about who you are than what you get. He wrote about simplicity, how less stuff and fewer commitments led to more peace. One cold December morning, Matthew drove to the hill overlooking the town. Snow had gently blanketed the rooftops and the streets looked quiet and peaceful. He looked down at the town that raised him, that welcomed him back when he was broken. He whispered a quiet thank you to his grandfather, to the lessons, and to the second chance he never thought he'd get. Years passed, and Matthew became known around town as someone others came to for advice. Not because he had all the answers, but because he had lived through enough questions. He published his grandfather's journals with commentary of his own, and the book spread across libraries, schools, and small-town book clubs. One of the final entries in William's journal read, "Life doesn't wait for you to understand it. Keeps moving whether you learn the lessons or not. But if you do learn them, even just a few, you'll never be the same. You'll see the beauty in broken things, the strength in soft hearts, and the freedom in letting go." And Matthew did. He never became wealthy again. He never moved back to the city. But he found peace, love, and purpose, things he used to believe were too distant for someone like him. He had learned the life lessons. And he was never the same again.